What's up, everybody? Today I'm making the first video in a multi-part series about the Semi-Slav defense. I feel like many parts are called for because there's just so many different continuations and lines. Today, I'll just do an overview about all the different directions white can take this opening into and some of the main lines that you'll see. But then I'll have, specific videos for each of the different lines and more thorough explanations. If you're interested in a specific line that I mentioned here, go down to the description, and if I've already made a video about it, it will be there. So all the videos from this series will be in the description. So once I share all of the different lines, if you're interested in one specifically, find it down below. So the Semi-Slav is d4, d5, and now c4. I mean, there's many ways to get it, but this is one way. Okay, the knights on the f file get pushed out, and now c3 is played, knight to c3 that is, and here e6 starts the Semi-Slav position. Okay, so one huge thing to understand is the core of the Semi-Slav, or like the big part of the Semi-Slav, is this triangle pyramid thing here in the center, and it's very rare to reach something like this where both e6 and c6 are played, because usually, only c6 on its own is played, for example, in the Caro-Kann, right? So usually, this formation here is very rare, and that's one of the things that make this opening unique. Notice another thing, this bishop here is trapped, right? So there is a specific line that, again, I'll get to later on, where, d5 is played, and eventually you look to play c5, and in that line, this pawn is already gone, and then you place the bishop on b7. So there is possibilities for this bishop to get into the game, but, overall, this bishop usually is one of the last pieces to get developed. From here, there's a couple of options, and I'll mention each one right now. So E3 is one of the biggest options and definitely the most positional option. You see that this formation here with the pyramid is now kind of being faced off with white's own positional formation here with the pawns here, and it also unleashes this bishop. And this is a line that is going to be so heavily focused on in my series because it's just so popular. Okay, another option though, which I definitely need to mention, is bishop over here to g5, pinning the knight. And again, there's different options that you can take it here, and I'll make videos about each one. But overall, this is a very powerful move if white doesn't want to lock up the position yet and first maybe wants to unleash the bishop. And then a final move, which is so rare that I'm not going to make a specific video for it, I'm just going to quickly explain it here, is if white takes the pawn on d5, this is so very rare, well, you need to make sure to take back on your e pawn taking back, okay? And that's the key thing here. Just remember, if you ever face this, which there's a chance you won't, but if you ever face this, take back with the e pawn. That's the huge thing here to remember, because now already your bishop seems much more free, and you still have this nice, somewhat of a nice formation here to continue the game. So this is the only thing you need to remember if white decides to take. But now let's get back to the more reasonable options that white has, which is one of these moves. So let's start with what happens if e3. Well, if e3 is played, notice that this opens up this light square bishop, and that means that you don't want to take, because if you take, well, now white can develop their bishop, capture back, all in one move. So instead, you want to first wait until white maybe unleashes their bishop, and that's usually what ends up happening. So you're going to have one move to play, which is knight over here to d7, and now notice that if, for example, the move, let's say e2 is played, well, now if you take, when white takes back, that's just lost them a tempo, and so it's the same position, but the only difference is you have an extra developed piece. And similar, if the bishop goes here, although it is still different because now the bishop has to take, otherwise the bishop has to move back. In the other position, a different move can be played. So for example, in this position, well, now even this move can be played, just controlling the center. So there is still some difference, but the point being, you don't want to break this tension until the bishop's already been developed, and in the meantime, just the move d7 with the knight is a very strong idea. Another thing that I should explain is that this line right here is the most popular. It's the main line It's called the meran line, the meran variation, if you will. And there's just a lot of continuations from here. So for example, take, well, now the bishop takes back, and now b5 kicks the bishop back, and there's so many different lines. And, you know, even though these look very similar, all these different moves that I'm highlighting, they're actually different. And I'll make videos to cover these different lines because, yeah, they are different. And then already you have this idea of bringing the bishop over here to b7, playing the move c5, and the bishop is now happy in this b7 square. Okay, so that is kind of the line that I talked about earlier, where the bishop finds a nice square to be situated on. But if this move isn't played, if the meran isn't played, well, white has two options. So the first one is the move that I talked about here, where now you can, if you take, well, white doesn't have to take back. White can play this move, but again, you know, white can also take back. It's not their only option. So this definitely is one of the lines. But then the other line is known as the anti-meran, and it's queen over here to c2. And the idea here is to hold off on developing the bishop, because then once you take, once again, the bishop can jump here in one move, not lose that tempo, and land at a nice position, okay? So, you know, there's two basic ideas here. One is to develop the bishop and allow for this idea. The second one is holding off on this development. And then that could even, you know, go on further. So, for example, bishop here, well, now instead of developing the bishop, getting ready to castle, well, again, white might play this move instead of developing the bishop. So it's kind of this idea where this tension here between the pawns, even though it looks completely unrelated, it's actually stopping this bishop from actually getting into one of these squares. So white can try to hold on as much as they can, but eventually, usually, white will give in and play one of these moves. Once again, all of these lines will be covered way more in depth in a specific video. So that's kind of the things that will stem from e3, these three options that I mentioned. And now let's go back to bishop here. So there's two, moves. The engine, believes that this is the best move. The idea is just taking the pawn here and ignoring the bishop here, which usually is not a threat. The pinned bishop here, usually does not become a threat. But there's actually a very funny line where this bishop ends up actually being a threat. So this move now stopping the bishop from taking back, and now this move taking advantage of the pinned knight. And this is a very fascinating idea, because black doesn't even have to give up here, because this move now, it looks like if take, well, you take back the bishop, so it looks fine. So the bishop comes here. And now this move, and now the knight can take. So there's just a very funny line, all stemming from bishop coming here and you taking here. And I think in the end of this, white will be up a pawn, and in the beginning, white was down a pawn, right? So overall, I think that this does not really end up doing black a huge favor. And so instead, what I would recommend, rather than taking, personally, there's the move h3, and now there's two options that white can take, and you'll notice that overall there's just a lot of different continuations. So this is the move that I recommend, but I'll talk about both in future videos. Thank you guys so much for watching the video today. If you have other videos you want me to make, leave them down below in the comment section, and also comment down if you've ever tried this opening in one of your games. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already for constant chess videos that will help you become a better chess player, and check out my brand new website at www.chessgeek.org. Thank you all for checking in. See y'all next time. Peace out.